I just want to tell one more story about the process that the Israeli society had went through the years. One of my first stories in the late 80s was about this Bedouin woman from Nebi Samuel, which is next to Jerusalem, who was about to give birth in the middle of the night. It was a very cold night in January, rainy. And her brother-in-law and her husband took her with their car, tried to take her to the hospital. They had to cross a checkpoint on the way to the hospital in Jerusalem. In the first checkpoint, so she told me, the soldiers wouldn't let them pass. They tried an alternative way. Again, they wouldn't let her pass. And then they reached the third checkpoint, and she gave birth in the car. After giving birth in the car, they were begging the soldiers to let them pass, or at least to take the baby in their own car to the hospital. They refused, so she told me. And then this lady took her baby. She was traumatized by giving birth in a car, you can imagine yourself. And she was walking alone in the rain, in the cold night, 2.5 kilometers to the hospital of Augusta Victoria, which is in Mount Scopus in East Jerusalem. By the time she arrived to the hospital, the baby was dead. When I first heard this story, I was still in the beginning of my career. First of all, my first reaction was a very typical Israeli reaction. It's not true. It's this Arab imagination. It's those Arab lies. It's the Arab exaggeration. It's propaganda. So I checked and double-checked the story, and it was found a true one. But what happened after it is remarkable, because it was, I don't want to say that the Israeli society went into turmoil, but there were some people who were shocked from this story. It was discussed in a cabinet meeting. Some soldiers were punished. Ever since then, I published at least another 12 stories of women who lost their babies in checkpoints. And never again was there any kind of public reaction, nothing. I can assure you now that if you meet any Israeli, any average Israeli, and tell him this story, his first automatic reaction will be, and what would be if she would have carried a bomb? And how do you know she didn't carry a bomb? And how do you know she wasn't about to commit suicide and to kill the soldiers? This will be 90% of the Israelis, 80%. I don't want to commit myself because I didn't judge it, but this will be the average reaction. So if there is little hope from inside, let's look outside. And unfortunately, outside is the United States, at least in the Middle East. And we are facing now this new scene in this ongoing farce, masquerade, which is called peace process in the Middle East, the longest peace process in history, which never led to anywhere. And we are facing now a new phase, which is maybe the most ridiculous one of all of them, with an Israeli prime minister who speaks about a two-state solution, who speaks about evacuating at least part of the territories, and who is not even ready to the most minimal step of freezing the constructions in the settlements. Is there any better indication for his real intentions rather than this? If you are even not ready to freeze the settlements, what else can you ask? And we are going to this so-called peace process vis-à-vis a representative of half the Palestinian people, discussing the fate or the future of only half the Palestinian territories, because Gaza is totally ignored and Hamas is totally boycotted. I'm not in favor of Hamas. It's for sure not my cup of tea. But the world wanted democracy in Palestine. And the world had almost forced, together with Israel, elections on the Palestinian territories. The only thing, and the Palestinians went for elections, and they were supervised and found by President Carter and other supervisors as free elections. The only thing that those stupid Palestinians didn't understand is that democracy means to vote for those that the West is, or Israel is expecting them to vote, not to make the wrong choice. Then it's not democracy. And they made the wrong choice, and they voted Hamas. And Hamas is there. Cast-led, one of the targets of Cast-led was obviously to weaken Hamas, if not to make them fall. I can assure you now that Hamas was never as strong in Gaza as today. And Hamas is there, and Hamas is totally excluded. And I'm not sure that Hamas is a partner. But let's try. I never understood why it is legitimate to discuss with Hamas now over 4 years about the fate of one Israeli kidnapped soldier, Gilad Shalit, and it's not legitimate to discuss with them the future of two peoples. So Hamas is excluded. The Prime Minister speaks in one language and acts, the Israeli Prime Minister speaks in one language and acts in another language. And the big hope, Barack Obama, I must admit here that I had tears in my eyes when he was elected, and at his speech in Chicago on this night was for me an almost emotional experience. And I had so many hopes that he's going to bring change also to this part of the world. And here we are 2 years later, nothing new under the sun. Many times when you see the relationship between Israel and the United States, it's very hard to tell who is the superpower between the two. A dispute which endangers the world much more than what's going on in Afghanistan and in Iraq, which is so dangerous and so relatively easy for solution. When Israel is as depending and as isolated as never before, I can't say that Israel is totally isolated because we have Micronesia to our side and even Canada, but unfortunately this is not enough. I think that Cast-led was a turning point. Israel was never condemned like in the years ever since Cast-led. There is a growing gap between public opinions in many countries, maybe also in yours. I don't know enough about the public opinion here. I know about your official government's position. But there is quite a growing gap, at least in Europe, between the public opinion and the official attitude of the governments. But in any case, Israel is depending on the United States, not only economically and militarily, but also politically. And this could have been a tool to influence Israel, to put pressure on Israel, to put an end to the occupation and to try to get to a solution with the Palestinian people. I don't see that Obama is using this opportunity. By all means not. 2 years were already wasted for nothing. I truly believe that any devoted American president could have had put an end to the occupation within months, if he only would like to do so. And before you ask, I can tell you that I don't blame or put the responsibility, the exclusive responsibility on the Jewish lobby in the United States. This cannot be true that it's only the Jewish lobby. The Jewish lobby is very powerful, very influential, very aggressive. But this cannot be the only explanation. I can tell you also here that we Israelis don't need automatic and blind friends. I think that friendship means also being critical when it's needed, and friendship means also to raise your voice when your friend is going wrong. Think about your personal friends. Whom would you appreciate more? A friend who supports you blindly, whatever you do, or a friend who tells you you did wrong or you are doing wrong? Take a drug addict. You can handle him in two ways. You can supply him with more money to buy more drugs, and he will be very grateful to you. And you might send him to a rehabilitation center, and he will be very angry and very furious at you. But isn't this real friendship? Can anybody here claim that Israel is not occupation addicted after all those years? And I'm convinced that one day, I don't know when, it seems very far, Israelis will ask themselves, what was it all about? Was it worth it for real estate? Was it worth it for another 20, 30 kilometers? And excuses we always have. For years we said that as long as the Palestinians continue with terror, there will be no progress. It's now a few years that there is almost no terror whatsoever. No progress. For years we say that there is only one obstacle for peace in the Middle East, and the obstacle is Yasser Arafat. Only we'll get rid of him, there will be peace. And then we got rid of him one way or the other, and then came Mahmoud Abbas. Mahmoud Abbas is too weak. You don't expect us to make peace with this weak leader. Arafat was too strong. In between, we claimed that the Palestinians have to meet one condition, only one, to change the Palestinian amendment. The American president went to Gaza, to the meeting of the Palestinian Council, to change the amendment. Not enough. Now we have a new invention. They have to recognize us as a Jewish state. Imagine yourself, Canada is asking the world to recognize Canada as a Canadian state. All ways to get out from our own responsibility, because we are not dealing with a symmetry. And before someone asks me, and what about the Palestinians, and what about their mistakes, and what about their responsibilities? Yes, they've made mistakes. Yes, they carry responsibilities for many things. But there is no symmetry. Because between the occupier and the occupied one, there is no symmetry. And the responsibility to put an end to it is on the occupier. And I can say more than this. When someone steals your car, the thief is not in a position to put conditions on returning the car. And we are dealing only with 67 occupation. 48 is still here. Palestinians are still in the refugee camps. And I don't want to get into it too much now. You know, if 48 would have stopped in 48, I would almost justify what happened. I would for sure say it was inevitable. I would say that in any war, things are happening, atrocities are taking place. But the problem is that the ideology and the policy of 48 is continuing until today. And then you have to bring up also 48, because it never stopped.